I was 68 when my world shattered. It was a gray, drizzly afternoon in our small town of Willow Creek. The kind of day where the sky seems to weep alongside you. My husband, Robert, had passed 3 days earlier after a grueling battle with cancer that stole his strength, but never his spirit. The funeral was held in the old stone church where we'd married 45 years ago, its stained glass windows casting muted colors across the pews. I stood by his casket, my hands trembling, as I clutched a single white rose, its petals soft against my calloused fingers. My black dress felt heavy, like it carried the weight of every sleepless night I'd spent by Robert's hospital bed. Friends and neighbors filled the seats, their whispers of condolence blending with the organ's mournful hymn. I tried to focus on their kindness, but my heart was a raw wound, and I wasn't ready for what came next. My son, Michael, approached me as the service ended. At 40 he was tall like his father, with the same broad shoulders, but his eyes lacked the warmth Robert's always held. They were cold, distant, like a stranger's. In his hand was a manila envelope, crisp and official, the kind that screams trouble. "Mom," he said, his voice flat, almost mechanical, "you need to read this." I took it, my fingers numb, expecting maybe a letter of love, a shared memory of his father, something to bridge the growing gap between us. Instead, I pulled out an eviction notice. My breath caught, a sharp pain slicing through my chest. The words blurred on the page, but their meaning was clear. I was to vacate our family home, the home Robert and I had built from nothing, the home where I'd raised Michael, where every scuff on the hardwood told a story within 30 days. Before I could process the words, a voice cut through the haze. "I'm the new homeowner," Cassandra said, sauntering up beside Michael. His new wife, all of 35, wore a black dress too tight for a funeral, her red lipstick stuck against her smug grin. She spoke loudly, deliberately, ensuring the mourners nearby could hear. "This place needs a fresh start, Evelyn. You understand." Her words were a blade, twisting in my gut. The crowd fell silent, their eyes darting between us, some wide with shock, others heavy with pity. I wanted to scream, to demand how she dared speak to me like that, how my own son could stand there and let her, but my throat tightened and all I could do was stare at the envelope, my hands shaking so badly the paper crinkled. The church seemed to close in around me, the air thick with the scent of lilies and damp wool coats. This was my husband's funeral, the day I was supposed to say goodbye to the man who'd been my rock for nearly half a century. Instead, I was being stripped of my home, my dignity by the son I'd carried, loved, sacrificed for. The betrayal wasn't just a wound, it was a violation, a theft of everything I'd thought we were as a family. Yet beneath the heartbreak, a spark of defiance flickered. I wasn't some fragile old woman to be pushed aside. I'd survived worse than this, and I'd survived them. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, the eviction notice spread out before me like a death sentence. The house was quiet, save for the creak of the old pipes and the faint patter of rain outside. It smelled of Robert, his pipe tobacco, the cedar of his favorite armchair in the corner. This was our sanctuary, the place where we'd laughed, fought, dreamed. We'd bought the land in our 20s, a scrappy young couple with nothing but determination. I'd planted the rose garden out back, hauled lumber for the porch, painted every wall. Michael had grown up here, his tiny handprint still faint on the doorframe, to his old room. How could he think he could erase that? I poured a glass of red wine, the bottle a gift from Robert on our last anniversary. My hands were steadier now, the shock giving way to a simmering resolve. Cassandra's face flashed in my mind, her calculated charm, the way she'd wormed her way into Michael's life 2 years ago. She was a storm, all ambition and no heart, always dropping hints about modernizing the house, turning it into some soulless investment property. I'd seen her type before, but I never thought Michael would fall so far under her spell. He hadn't even visited during Robert's final months, too busy with her, sending text instead of showing up. I'd excused it, blamed his work, her influence, anything but the truth. He'd chosen her over us. I leaned back, the chair creaking under me, and closed my eyes. Robert's voice echoed in my memory, steady and sure. "Evelyn, you're tougher than anyone I know. Don't let anyone take what's yours. He'd said it years ago when we'd faced a shady contractor trying to cheat us. He'd made sure the house was in my name, the deed locked away in our safe, just in case. You've earned this, Evelyn, he'd said. This is your legacy. I opened my eyes, my gaze falling on the safe in the corner. Inside were the papers that could undo this betrayal, the original deed, Robert's will. They thought they could bully me out, but they didn't know the woman they were dealing with. I sipped my wine, the spark of defiance now a steady flame. Michael and Cassandra had made their move, but this was my home, my life. I'd raised a family here, buried my heartaches here, built a legacy here. If they wanted a fight, I'd give them one they'd never forget. The morning after the funeral, I woke to the sound of rain drumming against the windows, a relentless rhythm that matched the ache in my chest. My body felt heavy, not just from grief, but from the weight of what Michael had done. I shuffled to the kitchen in my old robe, the one Robert used to tease me about, saying it made me look like a cozy librarian. The memory stung, but it also grounded me. I made coffee, the familiar hiss of the machine, a small comfort, and sat at the table, staring at the eviction notice, still lying there like an unwelcome guest. I needed to understand how it had come to this, how my son, my Michael, had turned into someone who'd humiliate me at his father's funeral. The coffee burned my tongue, but I welcomed the sharpness. It kept me focused. Michael had always been my golden boy. As a child, he'd been sensitive, clinging to my side during thunderstorms, his small hand tucked in mine. I'd read him stories, bandaged his scraped knees, cheered at his soccer games. Even as a teenager, he'd been kind, helping Robert fix the porch swing, or surprising me with breakfast on Mother's Day, but that Michael seemed gone now, replaced by a man I barely recognized. It started 2 years ago when Cassandra swept into his life. She was 35, sharp as a tack, with a smile that never reached her eyes. She'd met Michael at some fancy networking event in the city, her ambition practically radiating off her. Within months, he was smitten, hanging on her every word, while she sized up our family like a vulture circling prey. I ran my fingers over the eviction notice, the paper crisp and cold. Cassandra's influence was written all over it. She'd always had a way of planting ideas, making them sound like Michael's own. This house could be so more, she'd said once, standing in my living room, eyeing the oak beams. Robert and I had installed ourselves. It's a gold mine, Evelyn, just waiting for the right vision. I'd brushed it off then, thinking she was just dreaming out loud. But now I saw it for what it was, a plan. She wanted the house, a 5-acre lot in Willow Creek, where property values had skyrocketed, thanks to city folks looking for rustic charm. Michael, desperate to please her, had gone along with it, even if it meant betraying me. I called my daughter Sarah that morning. At 42 she was my rock, practical and fiercely loyal, living across the state with her husband and 2 kids. I told her everything, the eviction notice, Cassandra's smug declaration, the way Michael wouldn't meet my eye. "Mom, this is insane," she said, her voice tight with anger. "Michael's lost his mind. Cassandra's behind this. I know it." Sarah had never trusted her, not since the first family dinner where Cassandra spent the evening scrolling her phone, barely acknowledging Robert's frail attempts at conversation. "I'll look into the legal side," Sarah promised. "But Mom, don't let them push you out. You're stronger than this." Her words were a lifeline, but I heard the tremble in her voice, the same hurt I felt. We were a family fractured, and I couldn't shake the question, where had I gone wrong? After we hung up, I needed to move, to do something with the restless energy building inside me. I climbed the stairs to the attic, the wooden steps creaking under my weight. The air up there was musty, filled with the scent of old books and forgotten summers. I opened a cardboard box, pulling out photo albums that hadn't seen daylight in years. There was Michael at 5, grinning in my arms as we fed ducks by the creek. Another of Robert and me, laughing at our 25th anniversary party. Michael and Sarah dancing nearby. The memories were a punch to the gut, reminding me of the family we used to be. But there were newer signs I'd ignored. Michael's growing distance, his excuses for missing holidays, Cassandra's pointed comments about the house being outdated. She'd once suggested I move to a cozy apartment in town, as if I was some frail old woman ready to be shelled. I'd laughed it off, but now I saw her words for what they were, a seed planted, waiting to sprout. By afternoon, I couldn't sit still any longer. I went to the safe in the corner of the living room, hidden behind a framed photo of Robert and me on our honeymoon. My fingers trembled as I turned the dial, the click of the lock echoing in the quiet house. Inside were the documents that held my future, the original deed to the house, in my name alone, and Robert's will, naming me sole beneficiary of the property. Years ago, Robert had insisted on this setup, his practical mind always planning for the worst. "You've earned this home, Evelyn," he'd said, his voice firm. "No one can take it from you." I clutched the papers to my chest, my defiance growing like a storm. They thought they could bully me, but they didn't know the half of it. That evening, Michael called. I braced myself, hoping for an apology, a hint of the boy I'd raised. "Mom, let's talk," he said, his tone clipped, like he was reading from a script. "Cassandra and I want to move forward with the house. It's for the best." I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. "The best for who, Michael?" I asked, my voice low but steady. He hesitated, then mumbled something about expenses and hung up. The disconnection felt final, like a door slamming on the past we'd shared. I sat there staring at the phone, tears burning my eyes, but beneath the heartbreak, that flame of defiance burned brighter. I'd raised him, loved him, sacrificed for him. If he wanted a fight, I'd give him one. I wasn't just fighting for a house, I was fighting for the life I'd built, for the respect I deserved, for the woman I still was. The week after Michael's call felt like wading through mud, every step heavy with the weight of what lay ahead. The rain had stopped, but the air in Willow Creek stayed damp, the kind of chill that seeps into your bones. I woke each morning to the same ache, a mix of grief for Robert and fury at my son's betrayal. But I wasn't one to wallow. I'd spent 68 years building a life, raising kids, keeping a home, nursing Robert through his final days. If Michael and Cassandra thought they could push me out without a fight, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. I started by calling Sarah again. She'd been digging into the eviction notice, her practical mind already 3 steps ahead. "Mom, I talked to a lawyer friend," she said, her voice crackling over the phone. "This smells like a scam. Cassandra's probably pushing Michael to cash in on the property. I'm coming down this weekend to help." Her words were a balm, reminding me I wasn't alone. Sarah had always been my anchor, the one who'd call to check on me during Robert's illness, when Michael was too busy with his new life. Knowing she'd be here in a few days gave me the push I needed to start building my case. I spent that morning in the dining room, spreading out papers on the oak table Robert had built with his own hands. The deed, the will, old bank statements. Every document told the story of my life with this house. I'd paid the mortgage through lean years, when Robert's carpentry business slowed, and I took extra shifts at the library. I'd planted the garden, fixed the leaky roof, scrubbed the floors until they shone. This wasn't just a house, it was my proof of a life well lived. I jotted down notes, my handwriting shaky but determined, listing every detail I could remember about the property's history. If Cassandra wanted to play dirty, I'd be ready with the truth. By afternoon, I needed a break from the paperwork. I stepped outside, the crisp air biting my cheeks. The rose garden out back was in full bloom, the white petals Robert loved glowing under the overcast sky. I knelt to pull a few weeds, the familiar task soothing my nerves. That's when Mrs. Delaney, my neighbor, waved from her porch. "Evelyn, you okay?" she called, her voice thick with concern. Word had spread about the funeral, about Cassandra's cruel announcement. I forced a smile. "I'm hanging in there, Ruth." She shook her head, muttering about that awful woman, and promised to bring over her famous lasagna later. Her kindness, small as it was, reminded me that Willow Creek was my home, not just a piece of land Cassandra could claim. Sarah connected me with a lawyer named Ellen, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, who'd seen her share of family disputes. We met at a coffee shop in town, the kind with mismatched mugs and the smell of burnt espresso. Ellen scanned the eviction notice, her glasses perched on her nose. "This is flimsy," she said, tapping the paper. "It's based on a forged deed. They're banking on you not fighting back, Evelyn. People like Cassandra prey on that." I laughed a bitter sound that surprised me. They don't know me at all then. Ellen's eyes crinkled with approval. She filed a motion to block the eviction and requested a court hearing, warning me it could take weeks. Keep your head down, she said. Don't let them provoke you. But Cassandra wasn't one for subtlety. By the next day she was posting on social media crowing about our new beginning in the house. She shared photos of my living room, captioned with plans for modern upgrades, like tearing out the fireplace Robert had built. Neighbors called me horrified. She's acting like it's already hers, said Mr. Thompson from across the street. I thanked him but asked him to stay quiet. Let her dig her own grave, I thought. Every post was another nail in her coffin, evidence of her arrogance. I saved screenshots, my hands steady now, fueled by a quiet rage. The hardest part came a few days later. Michael showed up at the house, unannounced on a rainy evening. I heard his knock, sharp and insistent, and opened the door to find him standing there, his coat soaked. "Mom, why are you making this difficult?" he said, not even stepping inside. "Cassandra says the house is too much for you now. You'd be happier somewhere smaller." His words were hers, rehearsed and hollow. I stared at him, my son, and saw only a stranger parroting his wife's lies. "This is my home, Michael," I said, my voice low but firm. "I built it, I raised you here, and you think you can just take it." He shifted, his eyes flickering with something guilt maybe, but he said nothing. "You should go," I told him. He left without another word, the rain swallowing his footsteps. I sank onto the couch, my chest tight. The boy who'd once drawn me crayon cards for Mother's Day was gone, replaced by someone who'd rather see me homeless than stand up to his wife. The betrayal cut deeper than I could say, but Sarah's words echoed in my mind. "You're stronger than..." She arrived that weekend, her car pulling into the driveway like a lifeline. Over coffee we organized more evidence, bank records, letters from Robert affirming my ownership, even photos of the house's construction. "You're a fighter, Mom," Sarah said, squeezing my hand. "Don't let them break you." Her belief in me fanned that spark of defiance into a flame. This wasn't just about a house anymore, it was about respect, about the life I'd poured into these walls, about proving I wasn't invisible. I was Evelyn Harper, and I was ready to fight. The morning of the court hearing arrived like a storm breaking after weeks of heavy clouds. I woke at dawn, the sky outside my bedroom window a pale gray, promising a crisp fall day in Willow Creek. My stomach churned, not with fear but with a restless energy, a need to set things right. At 68, I'd faced plenty: Robert's illness, lean years when we scraped by, the ache of losing friends to time, but nothing like this. My own son, Michael, trying to steal my home, spurred on by his wife Cassandra, who thought she could erase me. Today I'd show them both who I was. I dressed carefully, choosing a simple black dress, the same one I'd worn to Robert's funeral. It felt fitting, like armor for the battle ahead. Sarah drove me to the courthouse, her hands tight on the steering wheel. "You've got this, Mom," she said, her voice steady but her eyes bright with worry. I nodded, clutching the folder of documents we'd prepared, the original deed, Robert's will, bank records, proving I'd paid for the house over decades. My lawyer, Ellen, met us outside the small brick building, her briefcase bulging with our case. "They don't have a leg to stand on," she said, adjusting her glasses. "But stay calm, Evelyn. Let the evidence speak." I gave her a tight smile. Calm wasn't easy when your son was trying to throw you out on the street, but I'd keep my head high. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, with polished wooden benches and a faint smell of lemon cleaner. Familiar faces filled the seats. Mrs. Delaney, Miss Thompson, even the pastor from Robert's funeral, all there to support me. Their presence was a quiet strength, a reminder that Willow Creek was my community, not just a plot of land Cassandra coveted. Michael and Cassandra sat across the room, her in a sleek navy suit, him staring at his hands. She whispered to him, her manicured nails tapping his arm, but he didn't look up. For a moment I saw the boy he'd been, the one who'd run to me when he fell off his bike. The memory hurt, but I pushed it down. This wasn't about that boy anymore. Ellen presented our case first, her voice clear and sharp. She laid out the evidence like a map. The deed in my name, signed when Robert and I bought the land 45 years ago, the will notarized and unambiguous, naming me sole owner, bank statements showing my payments, my labor, my life tied to that house. She held up the forged deed Michael had used, pointing out inconsistencies, a wrong date, a notary who didn't exist. "This is a clear attempt to defraud Mrs. Harper," she said, her eyes locking on the judge. "At her husband's funeral, no less." The room murmured, and I felt the weight of their shock, their sympathy. I kept my gaze forward, refusing to let Cassandra see me waver. Their lawyer, a slick man with a city accent, stood next. He spun a story about my inability to maintain the property, claiming Michael was protecting me by taking over. "Mrs. Harper is elderly, grieving, and the house is too much for her," he said, his tone dripping with false concern. "My clients want to ensure her safety." I nearly laughed. Safety by serving me eviction papers at Robert's funeral, by letting Cassandra parade as the new homeowner. I glanced at Michael, hoping for some sign of shame, but he kept his eyes down, his jaw tight. Cassandra, though, sat straight, her lips curved in a faint smile, as if she'd already won. Then it was my turn. Ellen had warned me I might need to speak, but nothing prepared me for the weight of standing in that courtroom, every eye on me. I walked to the witness stand, my steps steady despite the tremor in my hands. The judge, a stern woman with sharp gray eyes, nodded for me to begin. I took a breath, my voice low but clear. "This house isn't just bricks and mortar," I said. "It's the life I built with my husband. We poured our hearts into it. Every nail, every paint stroke, every memory. I raised my children there, cared for my husband there, buried my dreams there, when he died, and at his funeral, my son." I paused, my throat tightening as I looked at Michael. "My son tried to take it from me." The room was silent, the air heavy with the rawness of my words. I told them about the eviction notice, Cassandra's smug declaration, the years I'd spent making that house a home. "I'm 68, I said, "but I'm not weak. I've earned my place, and no one, not even my son, gets to take that away." I sat down, my heart pounding, but I felt lighter, like I'd reclaimed something just by speaking the truth. The judge didn't take long to deliberate. She leaned forward, her voice cutting through the tension. "The evidence is unequivocal. The property belongs to Evelyn Harper. The eviction notice is invalid, and the forged deed is null and void." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Cassandra's face crumpled, her confident mask slipping. Michael stared at the floor, his shoulders slumped. I felt no joy, only a hollow relief. I'd won, but the cost was a fracture in my family I wasn't sure could ever heal. As we left the courtroom, Sarah squeezed my arm. "You did it, Mom." I nodded, but my eyes lingered on Michael, who walked out with Cassandra, her heels clicking angrily. He didn't look back. The victory was mine, but the heartbreak was too. I'd fought for my home, for my dignity, but I couldn't fight for the son I'd lost. Not yet. The days after the courtroom victory felt like waking from a long bruising dream. The sun broke through Willow Creek's gray skies, casting a warm glow over my rose garden, as if the world knew I'd won back my home. At 68, I'd faced down my son's betrayal, stood tall in front of a judge, and proved I wasn't invisible. But the triumph was bittersweet, heavy with the loss of the boy I'd raised. Michael's silence since the hearing hung over me like a shadow, but I wasn't done living, not by a long shot. This house, this life was mine, and I was ready to reclaim it, piece by piece. Sarah stayed with me for a week, her presence a steady anchor. We spent the first morning repainting the living room, a soft blue that Robert had always loved, the kind that reminded him of the lake, where we'd spent our honeymoon. The smell of fresh paint filled the air, mixing with the faint cedar scent of Robert's old armchair. "This is you, Mom," Sarah said, wiping a streak of blue from her cheek. "This house is you." We laughed, the sound echoing in the room, a reminder that joy could still find its way back. She helped me reorganize the kitchen too, pulling out old recipe cards I'd written in my 20s, chicken pot pie, Robert's favorite, and the lemon bars Michael used to sneak before dinner. Each card was a thread to the past, but also a promise to keep going. The town rallied around me in ways I hadn't expected. Mrs. Delaney brought her promised lasagna, still warm from the oven, and sat with me on the porch, sharing stories of her own battles with family. Mr. Thompson stopped by with a new rosebush for the garden, his gruff voice soft as he said, "You're tougher than nails, Evelyn." Even the pastor dropped off a handwritten note, quoting Psalm 46, "Be still and know that I am God." Their kindness wove a net of support, reminding me that family isn't just blood, it's the people who stand by you when the ground shakes. I'd lost Michael, at least for now, but I wasn't alone. Cassandra's social media posts vanished, her new beginning exposed as a sham. I heard through the grapevine that she and Michael had moved to the city, renting a sleek apartment that probably suited her better than my creaky old house. I didn't care to know more. Her absence was a relief, like a storm passing, leaving only quiet in its wake. But Michael's betrayal lingered, a wound that hadn't scabbed over. One evening as I sat by the fireplace, the one Cassandra had wanted to tear out, my phone rang. It was Michael. My heart leapt, then sank. I answered, bracing myself. "Mom," he said, his voice softer than before. "I'm sorry." The words were thin, frayed, like he wasn't sure they'd hold. I waited, letting the silence stretch. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," he continued. "Cassandra," she pushed, and I didn't know how to stop it. I closed my eyes, picturing the boy who'd once drawn me crayon hearts, now a man caught in his own mistakes. "You broke something, Michael," I said, my voice steady but not cruel. "You chose her over me, over your father's memory. That's not fixed with a phone call." He was quiet, and I heard a faint hitch in his breath. Maybe tears. "I know," he whispered. I'm sorry." I told him to take time, to figure out who he wanted to be. Then I hung up, my hands trembling but my heart resolute. I loved him, but love didn't mean letting him off easy. The next day I walked through the house, touching the walls, the door frames, the scuffs from years of living. In the hallway I found Michael's old handprints, faint but still there, from a day he'd gotten into the finger paints. I didn't cover them. They were part of this place, part of me, even if they hurt to see. I opened the windows, letting the crisp fall air sweep through, carrying out the weight of the past weeks. Outside, the roses swayed in the breeze, their white petals catching the sunlight. I thought of Robert, his voice in my ear. "You're tougher than anyone I know." He'd been right. At 68, I'd learned a hard truth. Love doesn't always shield you from betrayal, but strength does. I started new routines, small acts of reclaiming my life. I joined a book club at the library, where I'd worked for years, laughing with women my age over novels and coffee. I planted new bulbs in the garden, tulips that would bloom red come spring, a color for defiance. Sarah called every few days, her kids chattering in the background, promising to visit for Thanksgiving. The house felt alive again, filled with my choices, my presence. I wasn't just Evelyn Harper, widow or mother. I was Evelyn, fighter, survivor, a woman who'd held her ground and won. As I sat on the porch one evening, sipping tea and watching the sunset paint the sky pink, I thought about respect, not just the kind you demand from others, but the kind you give yourself. I'd spent years putting my family first, pouring my heart into Michael, Sarah, Robert, but this fight had taught me to stand up for me, to claim my worth. The house was mine, not because of papers or a judge's ruling, but because I'd built it, lived it, loved it. No one could take that away. Not Michael, not Cassandra, not time itself. I was still here, still standing, and that was enough.